The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. When we light the chalice, we illuminate a world that we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. Also, this morning, we want to light a special candle in honor of the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which took place this last week. It's a day to honor those who have been lost to anti-trans bigotry and violence. This day is a time of mourning for trans people and those who love them. We offer this prayer for our transcestors. We love and remember all our trans siblings that have been stolen from us. Our hearts are broken.
So our text for this morning's reflection is Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving. We start at the mailbox. Snoopy has a whole bunch of letters, nothing for Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown's the insecure part of us that's always a little melancholy about things. Thanksgiving, he says, great, oh great, another holiday to deal with. He's not joyful, he's not grateful. He talks to his little sister, and Sally. She says, the Christmas stuff is already in the stores, and I haven't even finished eating all of my Halloween candy. How do things move so fast? Linus says Thanksgiving is important. Our country was the first to make a national holiday to give thanks. Linus is our intelligence side. He also has social anxiety, sucking his thumb, blanket over the head. Okay, we've got that too. He gets stirred up when there are times to gather. We're supposed to be happy, look good. Well, we have all these feelings. They're kind of complicated. Some of them are good, you know. The food part sounds pretty good. Some Canadian friend says, well, since that's not actually a holiday for us, it's just like Thursday with more food, so that's got to be good. A few years earlier than the film, the Peanuts cartoon strip pictured Charlie Brown bringing out Snoopy's dinner on Thanksgiving Day. It was just his usual dog food in a bowl. Snoopy took one look at the dog food and says, this isn't fair. The rest of the world is eating turkey with all the trimmings, and all I get is dog food. Because I'm a dog, all I get is dog food. He stood there and stared at the bowl for a moment and said, I guess it could be worse. I could be the turkey. Phone rings. Peppermint Patty, who's got a thing for Charlie that he's not very interested in. She calls and says, good news, Chuck. Why she calls him Chuck is never explained. I'm free to come over to your house for Thanksgiving. Phone rings again. Oh, I'm going to bring Marcy. Oh, and Franklin too. Does this happen? People kind of inviting themselves over. Now, there are gatherings of ad hoc families, so it's in the spirit of that. Franklin asks if he should wear a tie. Patty says, no, Chuck isn't very formal. He always wears that striped t-shirt. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Now, she's the part of us that can be assertive, and that's a good thing. Get things done. It's a mixed blessing, though. It's not really a sign that a person is more integrated if they can speak up more, although it is useful, and we need that in kind of balance. Charlie Brown has what we might call boundary problems. Sally says, you're too wishy-washy. He says, what am I going to do? I can't even cook. Okay, about the desire to please. It's a nice thing. It is a good thing, but of course, sometimes we take it too far. It isn't really generous. It's kind of fear. It's just sort of not wanting anybody to be unhappy with us. So we shouldn't praise it too much, sort of in good balance with the assertiveness. Maybe we live in the creative tension between the two. So when they show up, Patty says hi, Marcy says hi. Franklin gives Charlie this really cool hand bump, has 5 on the sides kind of thing, and Charlie smiles. They're friends. This is more than just the moment here. And it's one of the only times in the whole movie that Charlie Brown smiles. Friendship helps. Now, Stephen Colbert says, I love Thanksgiving traditions, watching football, making pumpkin pie, and saying that magic phrase that sends your aunt storming out of the dining room into her car. So, you like that one? Okay. If I win one soul, I'm a success here. Were there special visitors at your childhood Thanksgiving? I remember sometimes they would invite a serviceman. There wasn't a war going on at the time, but that was some tradition that had come from a previous decades. Some young guy in uniform. We were a very evangelical family, so there were very often missionaries. In fact, there were missionaries staying at the house rather often. Very nice people. And the thing that struck me was that they dress up for dinner. The guy would put a tie on, Reverend whatever, and I thought, why did they do that? I'm in California, you're out playing, you're in a t-shirt, it's time to eat, you come and you eat, you don't go put a jacket on. Okay. What happens at this holiday is that the orphan archetype is stirred up a little. Not that we were orphans, but we're all eventually orphans, but that archetype, that feeling a little bit lost. Do I belong at the party? Even when you're having the party, the feeling is there. Maybe there's a little nostalgia for the good old days. Were they really that good? It really isn't about anything specific or true. It's an Edenic longing that is a human universal, yearning for some good time, something more perfect, something more fulfilling, something more spiritually satisfying. So I was saying that Charlie starts to complain. He can't get out of it, but he can't cook. He's supposed to go to grandmother's house, and he says, all I can do is make toast. Maybe popcorn. And Linus says, what time are you supposed to be at your grandmother's house? He says, 4:30. Okay, so just have 2 meals. They're here now. It's like 2. Let's do this, and then we'll do that. Okay, I guess that's a plan. This is Charlie Brown's anxieties about putting on a proper Thanksgiving, which he really is not capable of doing. This isn't actually a child's worry. This kind of worry sort of sets in around adolescence and then grows with time. Can I put on a good show? This is persona. Do I look okay? Does the table look okay? Are things okay? Am I okay? That is not just Charlie Brown. That's why this thing was so popular, this whole comic strip and movies and all the rest of it. It's because Charlie Brown shows us our vulnerability. What about this going off to grandmother's house? Is it going to be at grandmother's house this year? Or is your house grandmother's house? Who's going to have it? Does it move around? Or has it always been at a certain house until somebody moved into a retirement community and then there isn't a big house and what? And do we all go or do we have our own? And these things are complicated and feelings get hurt and there is some thread of loneliness through some of it. But Linus, who's kind of stable in the middle of this, suggests that Snoopy bring out a folding table. Well, Snoopy finds a picnic table, that'll do. No, it's not a picnic table, it's a ping pong table, big thing. Okay, it gets a bed sheet on it, okay, we're gonna do this thing. Charlie suggests that Snoopy come up with some kind of meal. Well, they actually all get in the kitchen and making a lot of toast and popcorn and jelly beans. They've got some jelly beans and some pretzels. Do what you can. Then there is the question, I like to cook with wine. Sometimes I even put some of it into the food. Yeah, that's not even true. I don't cook, but I can make toast. That's an old W.C. Fields line. Actually, if you start drinking right now, Thanksgiving can be a lot of fun. I digress. The question of who is there and who is not there. Did somebody die? Was there a divorce? Is somebody estranged? I'm vaguely connected to a family that had this big fissure, and there used to be a huge family gathering. Now there are 2 gatherings, and they don't talk to each other. one hopes that with time that kind of thing will heal, but what kind of absence is a presence at this holiday time? So we're gathered, we're at the table. Patty, who has expectations, as you've noticed, suggests there should be a prayer. Isn't there a prayer? Is somebody going to say a prayer? Well, Linus, who's the most scholarly, starts saying a little something of the history, and that Miles Standish was there, and that the Reverend gave, and he has actually memorized the prayer that was given at the first, or supposedly the record of prayer. But I don't want to go there. I want to have a little prayer. Settle in again. This is a bit of a meditation. Sort of halfway close your eyes and notice your breathing. The prayer I am suggesting is to nature and to our own animal nature, ourselves as creatures, okay? Ourselves as fragments of nature. Feel your chest rise and fall with the breathing. This is your life force. This is yourself as a living creature. Put your hands on your chest. Let them overlap a little bit, just gently on your chest, just so that you can feel the breathing, your body alive. And your hands can feel the chest just coming up just a tiny bit as you breathe. There it is. There's your life force. And from your chest, feel your hands. Feel that. Notice the little sensations of this simple thing. Notice the bit of emotion right on the surface of your chest. Breathe into that. Now, if you can, bring to mind and heart someone or something for which you are grateful. Okay. You can allow your eyes to open as you're ready and take your hands down. In the story, Snoopy begins to serve. He's got all this toast and popcorn, and he's making plates and moving them around the table and everything, and everybody's got something in front of them, and they've got something looks like ice cream or milkshake or something in a little goblet. Okay, it's the feast. It's what it is. Peppermint Patty explodes with disappointment. What kind of Thanksgiving is this? Don't you know anything about what cooking a real Thanksgiving dinner involves? Chuck, where's the turkey? Where are the mashed potatoes? Cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie? What blockhead made all of this? Well, Charlie goes off. These are our expectations. Now, we're probably a little more polite. Peppermint Patty tends to be a bit overly outspoken. She's a lot of people's favorite character, and it is wonderful. There is somebody in the room who will blurt something out, probably a little bit inappropriately, but thank goodness it got said, because everybody's kind of looking at the toast like, say what? But what did we expect? I mentioned this already. What is our longing on this occasion? It might have to do with more than what is happening right here. It might, the old saying, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. What is it? What is it we yearn for? What is it that this idea, this ritual, this harvest festival thing is supposed to be? Are we supposed to feel the abundance? Do we? Maybe we do for moments. Cool, great. But my guess is it's mixed, and there are other times we think, I'm not quite measuring up to my own expectation. This event isn't quite measuring up. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's a little poignant that we should honor it and not explode as Peppermint Patty has. Maybe own it a little bit more, that it's not Charlie Brown's fault. Placing blame. I had a cousin who was a school counselor, and we would talk shop a little because the only two in the family system that had any thoughts about psychology, and the rest all thought it was the devil's work. But she would say, the ruling principle of this family is to establish blame. In any given situation, just figure out whose fault it is, and then This is not just in that family. This is a human universal. We all do this from time to time. It proposes that things should be perfect. It suggests that things should work, and if they're not working, it's your fault. I'm pointing at Jim because he's here and I can take it out on him. But find anybody at random, and if all else fails, it's my fault. And maybe it's nobody's fault, or maybe it is, maybe it doesn't matter. Life just doesn't work that well so often. And being a good sport is to try to roll with that and not keep trying to pull toward this perfectionistic, brutal expectation. Marcy. Now, Marcy is Patty's little friend, and she's really smart, kind of quiet, a bit of a nerd. She gets real good grades, and she notices things. Patty, you were kind of rough on Charles, weren't you, sir? I don't know why she calls Patty sir. I don't know why she calls Charlie Charles, but okay, lots to be explained here. Did he invite you to dinner, or did you kind of invite yourself? Oh, Patty says, I never looked at it that way. Will you go and make up with Charlie? Well, you should do that, Patty. Yeah, but I'm not very good at that. I mean, I'm pretty much only good at baseball. Could you? And Marcy is good at this. And there's a part of us that can mediate. I'm seeing all these characters as aspects of ourselves. We have an inner Marcy who notices these things and is bright and has a better angle on it. And she does go and talk to Charlie, and his feelings are hurt. And things can be fixed. This is the reparative option. It's not the end of the world. We can make amends. It is possible. Charlie is just disappointed that I've spoiled everybody's Thanksgiving. Marcy comforts him. Thanksgiving is more than eating, Charles. You heard what Linus said. The Pilgrims were thankful, and we should be thankful for just being together. Thanksgiving, well, our focus shouldn't be solely on the extravagance of the meal, but on the people who share it with us, if we are lucky enough to have somebody around to share it with. And so all is forgiven. Patty goes over to Charlie and says, apology accepted, as if he's the one. But this is Patty, okay. It helps if we can acknowledge, I don't think Patty is capable of this, but it would help if she could acknowledge that her expectations were hers. And Charlie was not obligated to meet her standards, that she had something going on. And that's a level of insight that not everybody has. But what are we to make about this detail of the toast and the popcorn? Well, it can be a meager meal. And we might ponder what makes a congregation. Here we are thinking about a holiday. And well, you can have a big auditorium full of people, and you can have a rock band like mega churches do. I do like the idea of a rock band. Kevin, we got to work on that. Anyway, and it might seem like we've got toast and popcorn and pretzels here, but maybe there's a banquet, that other kind of banquet, a feast of the heart. After all, it's not food that makes the feast, it's the fellowship, it's the company, it's the gathering. It's friends and neighbors and co-workers drawn together by values and warm feelings. This is a feast, something to yearn for, a table at which we are already gathered. Charlie notices the clock. It's 4 o'clock. He's supposed to be at grandmother's house with Sally at 4:30. Calls grandmother, we're running late. Well, what's going on, she says. Oh, well, these friends came over. It didn't go out very well, and we didn't really get much to eat. And anyway, we'll be there, but we'll be a little late. Well, why don't you bring your little friends with you? Well, but there's 3 of them. Yeah, it's okay. Bring them all. And so to grandmother's house we head, and it's in the car. We're all singing the song, over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh through the white and drifting. There's no snow in the movie. There's no snow around here, but we get the idea. And it's that poem. By the way, Melanie put it on the back there. It's by Lydia Maria Child, who was a Unitarian activist back in the day, and it's familiar in song form. But Charlie protests about the song. There's one thing wrong with that. And Linus says, what? My grandmother lives in a condominium. It still holds up, whether there's woods or snow or anyway. So what are the action steps here? What are we to make of this? Well, remember that we need others. In this season, we are reminded of our interdependent identity. It's not just that we need them for company and need them to be around. We need them to be ourselves. This identity thing isn't inside our skin. It's a dynamic field. And it has to do with our friends. It has to do with who we see ourselves with. One thing to transcend is the magical thinking of self-sufficiency. It's highly praised in this culture, and it's a problem. A little is a good thing, but we take that too far, and we end up very alone. The antidote is humble gratitude. Gratitude helps us feel more alive. There's data on this. It works. Even if your life is really struggling, there's some little thing that you can ponder. You can go out and look at a flower. You can find something to be grateful for, and it does something. There is a psychological dynamic called a state-dependent memory. When you are melancholy, you will tend to remember other times that you were melancholy, and then you can say to yourself or others, my life is a kind of sad thing. I'm Charlie Brown, I'm just bummed out all the time. And the friend might say, what are you talking about? I saw you last week. We walked on the beach. You were talking about how beautiful the sunset was. Oh yeah, I forgot. You will forget. You will forget. It's not dishonest to see that selected memory. It's kind of a chemical thing. So if we make a practice of gratitude, we essentially tweak our memory to remember other times that were good. So that's what I'm suggesting, is keep a gratitude journal, note little things. The thing about keeping a journal is it becomes a practice. And even if I'm not in the mood, I've made a deal with myself, I'm going to enter something in here every day. And then you say, well, what? Well, I don't know, the flowers are nice. I see some familiar faces. This is good, okay. A couple of things. And then you can think of a couple more and a couple more. This is shifting a mood intentionally. Gratitude can help us overcome split thinking, dichotomous thinking, black and white thinking, where either things are good or bad. Either I'm good or bad. Either my friends are good or bad. Nah, we're all kind of somewhere in the middle. We're winners and losers at the same time. And the trick is to get into that creative tension and get past. It doesn't help to feel, I'm just the best thing ever. That's still one-sided. What we need to do is be somewhere in between and hold them both at the same time. So on this occasion, consider what we are truly thankful for, the simple blessings. Reflect on how we can extend hospitality and open our hearts to others. Try to practice mindful awareness on a daily level and express gratitude to others. Find an excuse to tell them that you feel good, that life is pretty good, that they're pretty good. Sometimes we think it and don't get it said. Try to get it into word. Oh yeah, back to the story. Snoopy manages to wrestle up some more food for Woodstock, who was named after the festival, and gets a good dinner out of this deal. I'm not sure about a bird eating a bird, but I won't go there. They didn't actually ask him to make a turkey dinner. They asked him to make some toast. He did what he was asked, but he's good at this, and he manages, and alone there they have a pretty good meal. Okay? So do you have a big meal on this holiday? Do you nap afterward? Or do you pass out like you were shot by a tranquilizer gun? Which was it? Gratitude practices lead to a feeling of fulfillment. Oscar Wilde said, after a good dinner, one can forgive anybody, even one's own relations. Most people who experience gratitude describe a feeling of fullness and richness that is unrelated to any material possessions. They experience a well of goodness that does not run dry. There is enough good to go around. They feel as if they were plugged into a source that fills a thirst beyond the physical. Oh, and those of you who cannot be with Thanksgiving cannot be with family on this Thanksgiving, please resist the urge to brag. Namaste. Blessed be. And so it goes.